السلام عليكم واهلا بكم في حلقه جديده من حلقات الكورس Introduction to Interprofessional Collaborative Practice. حلقه النهارده التايتل بتاعها is very interesting title. It is values, morals and ethics. Let's start first with our plan for today's session. هنتكلم في ايه النهارده؟ First, as usual, I'm going to start with a very simple reflection on very important questions that I really encourage you to think about answers for these important questions. I call it brainstorming. Then we're going to move into morals. What do you mean by morals? What is the origin of morals? After morals, we'll move to ethics. What are ethics? What are the theories behind ethics? What are the ethical principles? What do you mean by code of ethics? And then I'm going to end up with a very important process which I call ethical decision-making process. So let's start first with very important questions. These questions are, what is the difference between morals and ethics? We always listen to these two words and sometimes we usually make them up. Morals, ethics. يعني ايه morals? يعني ايه ethics? What do you mean by morals and ethics? Especially in Arabic language في كلمة واحدة تقريبا بتوصفهم أخلاقيات. Is there any difference or are they the same word, the same thing, the same concept, or there are very important differences between morals and ethics? What do we need? Why do we need ethics? هل احنا فعلا محتاجين ethics? Why do we need them? بلبنان يعني شو خصنا بالethics؟ يعني مصدع نفسنا بالethics ليه؟ As professionals, do we need ethics? We all heard of code of ethics اللي بيسموه بالعربي ميثاق المهنة أو ميثاق الشرف. What are these codes? What's inside these codes? ايه اللي جواهم؟ ايه المحتوى؟ What is the content? Are they the same? Are they similar? What can be common between these code of ethics? I think for most of this question we're going to have answers in this session, but actually maybe we're not going to have a full answer. Then I encourage you very much to find the answer yourself. So let's start first with reflection, and I like very much the word reflection. For you, I'm asking you right now, you're watching this video, I'm asking you, is it always easy for you to make decisions? Or sometimes you have some easy decisions, some are difficult decisions, and sometimes it's very difficult even to come up with a decision at all. I want to ask you another question. Do you always see the world around you in binary vision, two simple colors, black and white? زي ما بنقول دايما باللغة المصرية يا أبيض يا أسود. Is it always for you this kind of simplification, or you have multiple colors, many colors, different shades in between? Another important question, what do you think, which view can make your life easier? To have this only two colors, albeit with black and white, or different shades of colors? And as you see in the slide, I just wrote we are now talking philosophy. Now we start to think deep about ourselves. I very much encourage you to think about these questions, because when you think it's black and white, so it's only two choices, يمين شمال أبيض وأسود أعمل ما أعملش. So it's more or less, it's very simple, and in most cases actually it could be this way, especially for this kind of questions that the answer is there, it's right there, it's ready for you to come up with. For example, if we're asking something about height, distance, weight, it's very simple actually to find one single answer, very simple answer, quick, very fast answer. You know why? Because I have a measure. There are so many things that can be measured. But the question is, what about other things that cannot be measured? Or in other words, that it could have many measures, different measures, personal measures. Do you think the questions about these kind of variables would make it easier for us to make a decision compared to things that can be measured? Please, I want you really to reflect on this. Think about that in your life. Do you have something like that? I'm sure all of us have things like that in our life. So, what do you think about this painting? I'm going to show you a painting, and I really want you to think about it. What do you think about? You like it? You don't like it? Okay, let's have a look. I'm sure that for you that are familiar with art, they like art, they read about art, they understand art, maybe when they say this paint for the first time, their reaction will be like this. Wow, amazing. This is really nice one. This is really an expensive one. This is really a valuable one. But to be honest with you, for me, actually I don't have that much depth of knowledge or interest in art. For me, actually, I wonder, it's a very ugly one. I would never buy it or have it at home, even for free. But then let's have a look at the price of this paint. Would you believe it? This piece of art was sold like 10 years ago for $75 million. Yes, the number is right. $75 million. What do you think about that? So for those who valued this paint as really precious, they might say, oh, it's worth even more. But for me, actually, I would not buy it for free. So my question to you, yes, you, I have a question. Who is right and who is wrong? They, them, or me? And I think most of us will come to this answer that there's no right and no wrong. In some situations, in many situations, there's no yes, no. There is no black and white answers. This is an example, a very good example of this kind of situations. You know why? Because we are judging what we call value. And when we're judging a value, it's very difficult to come up with a simple, single decision. We're very different. The way we perceive things. We have different perspectives, different views, different backgrounds. And my point is, for so many things in our lives, there's no right or wrong. It depends. It depends. So let's start with the word value, because this word value is very important. If I'm going to talk about ethics, then I have to start first with the core, the roots, and the roots for ethics are called values. So then another question will come, and you know I like questions very much. Although sometimes I don't like answers at all, but still I like to ask myself questions, ask you questions. So what do you mean by the word value? What is meant by values? I know in Arabic values يعني قيم. قيم is very nice. But what are these values? Do you have values? Do you have values? What do you mean by the word value? And of course, from the word itself, what are they? What are values? There are very simple definitions. Values are things that are very important to you. Again, I want to ask you something. As a person, can you describe yourself in few words, in few things that really matter to you, that really defines you? It's a very difficult question. It might seem that it's a very simple one, but it is not. It's one of the toughest questions ever. If I want to ask you about, have a small piece of paper, and then with a pencil or a pen, try to come up with few words that really defines you. That would be the values. What's very important and very significant for you. And of course, what's important for you might not be that important for me. So have values, and you have priorities of these values. You have top values, and then comes less important and less important. The same for me. For example, for me, أنا بالنسبة لي, what comes on top is impact. To have impact, to have a fingerprint. This is to have respect, to help, to support others. These are values. But for others, it could be success. It could be money. Again, I'm not talking about what's right, what's wrong. I'm describing that we are very different, very unique, and every one of us have a unique set of important things, which we call values. These are some few examples of famous values, as you see in the slide. Excellence, life balance, trust, honesty, achievement, faith, openness, quality, integrity, innovation, teamwork, consistency, accountability, responsibility. These are values. And of course, each one of us has his own or her own set of values. And as you can see, values are personal. They came from the way we were brought up, تربينا ازاي, background, parents, fathers, mothers, school, home, streets, friends, colleagues, religion, beliefs. It all adds to our own values. What's really important, what's really can define us compared to others. So each one of us has his own or her own set of values, important things, significant things. From values, we are shifting to another thing. Comes a system that we call morals. So the origin is values, beliefs, and then from these values we have our system of morals. We call it morality. What do you mean by the word morals? It is a system each of one of us is using to define what is right and what is wrong, what is bad and what's good, what is good and what's evil. Again, since we have a unique set of values, then each one of us will have a unique set of morals, the way we judge things. I'll give an example. Some people, they value honesty. They don't like to lie. They hate to lie. But for others, lying is not bad at all. They don't even call it a lie. شطارة, فهلوة, تميز, business. So again, I'm not talking about, I'm not judging about what is right and what's wrong. I'm just showing you that we are very different. We have different set of values, and of course it will lead different sets of morals or morality, the way we make judgment about values. Morals, a very simple definition, is a system that we're using to make judgments about values. What's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what is beautiful, what's ugly, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable for us. Again, still, it's very personal. So we have values, beliefs, personal, and we have morals, set of morals. The way we are making moral decisions about right and wrong is still personal. And now comes the time for the question: what is ethics? It's very simple. When this person, when you, with your unique set of values, unique set of morals, the way you make decisions about values, will be placed in a group. So call it group, call it society, call it community, call it a profession. Now you're not alone. How you are going to behave, how you're going to act. There's so many theories about how a moral person can behave. This is what we call ethics. That ethics is about how a person with morals, with beliefs and values is going to behave in a group, in a society, in a community, in a profession. So this is about ethics. So ethics it's not personal anymore. It's not individual anymore. Here we can start to see the effect of the group think, and comes the very nice word, philosophical word, the group norms, which comes from what's called in philosophy normative philosophy. The way we think as a group, to put standards, to put norms for what is right and what's wrong. And maybe, I'm saying maybe, what we agree as a group is right or wrong may contradict, may conflict with, as persons or individuals, we think as right or wrong. So please think about that. Today's session is about thinking. It's about very deep thinking. It's about philosophy. So where ethics come from? So we agreed that ethics is more or less the application, the behavior of a moral person in a group. But where it comes from, ethics? Actually, it comes from a very interesting question. The question is, what ought to be done? What ought to be done? When I say ought to be done, then I have to mention another two questions actually. We have what must be done, what should be done, and now we have what ought to be done. And if we go very quickly through the three questions, what must be done? Must. Obligation, force, no freedom, no choices, no options. And I probably must, if I'm not going to do this, and probably be consequences. There will be liability. I'm going to pay for it. There will be consequences. It could be punishment. It could be I'll be fined, pay some money, gharama. It could be prison, jail, whatever. So must. And then we move into should. What should be done? And here you can feel that should be done. What can be advisable? Maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. Maybe I'm having a choice. I'm having an option here. So I have more degrees of freedom. And And when we come to the very important question about ethics, what ought to be done, ought to اللي بالعربي يمكن صعب شوي. الواجب, duty, but I don't mean duty by force. Duty, it comes from the inside, it comes from within, as a self-motivation. I give you this example. لما تكون أم قبل ما تتجوز وهي بنت بتنام 20 ساعة في اليوم. There is nothing to care about. اتجوزت وخلفت وبقى عندها بيبي في عز الليل at midnight and start to cry. Then she wakes up and she goes there and sometimes for so many days in a row she will not be able to sleep. Although there are other options, of course. يكون في nanny, babysitter, or whatever. But for most mothers, actually, they sacrifice willingly. This is what I call O2. They are self-motivated. They are responsible. From this O2 comes the word responsibility. Responsibility, that I mean I'm responsible. I'm going to answer to myself, to my conscience, لضميري, لربي. But it's very personal. Motivation comes from inside. Because there's another word called accountability. I'm going to answer to somebody else. I'm going to report to somebody else. I have to justify to somebody else. We call it accountability. These two important words. We have responsibility. It's about me, actually, answering to myself. Accountability, I'm expecting somebody else that I'm going to answer to or report to. I'm going to be asked. I have to justify why I did this or I didn't do this. So again, what ought to be done? It's about responsibility, it's about self-motivation, it's about self-regulation. So ethics comes from inside. ما هو الواجب إن نعمله؟ ما هو الأفضل نعمله from inside as a person. حتى لو كان في sacrifice, sometimes I have to pay for this. This we call sacrifice. So with O2 comes sacrifice. Sacrifice with your time, with your effort, with your money, probably with your health. So this is O2, and this is the origin of ethics. How are you going to behave? Why do I self-motivated to this? Why not obliged? If it is must, then it would be laws, قوانين. laws, في قانون المفروض في أي دولة محترمة أو نص محترمة أو ربع محترمة في law you are not abiding by the law, then there will be consequences. We call it liability. في ثمن هيدفع. ولكن when it comes to ought to, self, it is me. I want to do this. I'm willing to do this thing. So what about, still we're talking philosophy, as I told you. There's many theories, but there are two important, very famous theories about ethics that can describe, that's very relevant to medical professionals. We have first what we call the deontological theory, deontological or obligation-based. Obligation, as you can see. So if you're going to behave and you're asking yourself, is it right or wrong to do? The main criterion here, the main parameter would be, is it right? Does it come from true, clear intentions? هل النية حقيقية, واقعية, honest? And if the answer is yes, then you have to do it, regardless the consequences. So you focus only on the intention, the origin, the root. It comes from very, very deep values. And if you are convinced, then you have to do it. For example, your job as a healthcare provider is to preserve life. واحد جالي وطلب مني ان هو اساعده في موضوع الاوثناجيا او ان هو عايز تعبان من روحه وعايز يخلص من نفسه. It's impossible. How can you do this? You believe that you have to preserve life. Then you would never be a murderer. Then euthanasia, to these people who believe in obligation-based theory, they will never. It's impossible to do. So they tell the truth, whatever the consequences. اعمل الصح, whatever the consequences. This is what we call deontology or obligation-based theory. There is another important theory, very famous. They call it, its name is utilitarian theory, or as you can see from the name, consequence-based. Here the criterion or the parameter we're using to judge about the action or the behavior, right or wrong, will be the consequence, the outcomes. So if the outcomes are going to be good, fine, for the greater number of people, then you do it. And if the consequence or the outcomes will be negative, do not add to the welfare or the happiness of the population, then you will never do it. So I ask you now, what do you think is right for you to adopt? Obligation-based theory, you always do the right thing, or utilitarian theory, you judge by the consequences, by the outcome. What do you think? Right or left? So, sometimes it's very difficult. But to tell you something, this question was a trap for you. I asked you right or left. It's the same thing like I'm asking you black or white, أبيض ولا أسود, and we agreed that before that it's very difficult. In most cases, there are so many shades in between. So I think, for me, the right answer would be it depends. We are human beings. We make mistakes. We don't have the whole picture, the whole information. So it's okay that we can make mistakes, but we have to consider as much information as possible. We need to look holistically, globally, and then we decide. So both are fine, and both maybe not fine at the same time. It depends. It's not an easy job to do. And there are so many things that can we extract from ethics. We have ethical principles. What are the most famous ethical principles? For example, non-maleficence. Please don't do harm. الله يخليك ما تأذيش المريض مش مستحمل يعني. Beneficence, do good, help. Autonomy, you need to respect the ability of the patient or the care seeker or the person to make his or her own informed decisions. وعكس كلمة autonomy paternalism اللي احنا بنسميه بالعربي أنا أعرف مصلحتك، أنا بفهم أحسن منك وأنت ما بتعرفش أو أنت ما تفهمش. ده paternalism. But we need to respect autonomy. Justice, العدالة, meaning in this context of ethics, distributive justice, equality. ما فيش معايا ولا مع التانيين. Whatever, they're all patient, they're all people, they're all persons. If I can help, I should not discriminate based on different things, as you know. Veracity, you have to be honest, to tell the truth. You don't lie. Privacy, you don't need to discuss very private, very personal details in front of others that are not relevant. They should not hear about this information. Confidentiality, the information taken from the patient, for example, the patient records, health records, they're very confidential, and nobody can see it unless you are authorized. Sometimes you need legal papers, يعني شهادة من القاضي عشان يقدر حد يطلع على patient records. Loyalty, your main concern is the patient, nobody else. Respect to dignity, dignity meaning human worth, that every human being has a value, whatever you agree or not. It's your problem, but أي شخص يمشي على الأرض عنده value. كونك you respect or not, you know or not, this is another thing, but he or she is having a value. في value, في قيمة. Veracity, we said veracity before. Okay. Then we move to the code of ethics. We heard about code of ethics. We have pharmacist code of ethics, dentist code of ethics, physicians code of ethics, health sciences code of ethics, code of ethics, ميثاق الشرف أو ميثاق المهنة. What's important? Why do we need them? Are they important and significant, or كلام ورق وخلاص انشاء? Definitely, because one of the most important application of code of ethics that they define our roles and responsibilities, so we know, and the patient also knows what to expect from us. So it's a declaration, إعلان واضح. إيه اللي لينا وإيه اللي علينا، إيه المطلوب إيه المتوقع مننا as healthcare providers. It also establishes a guide, a pattern, so we know what is right and what is wrong. Again, as individuals, we have our right, wrong morals, but in groups, as professionals, as dentists, as pharmacists, we need to agree what is acceptable, what is not, and then we abide by this. As long as we agree, then this is the image of us. So, I move to ethical dilemmas. Sometimes we are placed in a very difficult situation. We don't want to make a decision, and either ways, it's very difficult. You are trying to decide or to choose between two principles, two good things, but what to do? Then a dilemma, أو بالعربي يسموها المعضلة. You have two ethical dilemma and two principles. For example, the patient does not want to have the medicine. This is autonomy. We should respect, but at the meantime, we know that this medicine is very important for the patient, and from beneficence point of view, we have to give it to him or to her. So we have autonomy, one side, and beneficence, the other side. How are we going to judge, to come up with a decision? It's very difficult. I'll leave you to think about that, but I will not leave you alone. I'll give you something that's very important, a process, a process of making decisions. It's not only about ethics, it can work anywhere, elsewhere. So we call it the 4-stage approach for decision making, or ethical decision making. The first step is a very important step. You have to collect as much as information, of course, relevant information. You need to know about code of ethics of your profession, legal law, criminal law, because sometimes you do things with good faith, good intention. ممكن تخش السجن عشان كانت نيتك كويسة. It's not right. You have to know all the relevant information about the situation you're going to make a choice. Then, it's a very difficult step, trying to analyze the situation. Who is involved? Who are the parts? Sometimes it's not clear. You see yourself and you see the patient, but actually there's so many parts involved, but they're not seen, but they're there. إمتى هيظهروا? At the time of problems, time of consequences. But actually you see only you, yourself, and the patient, for example. But there's so many. Family of the patient, patient fathers, patient family, patient agents, من يمثل المريض، صاحب الصيدلية، صاحب العيادة، القضاء، المجتمع اللي بيوظفك، صاحب المكان, and you yourself are involved. And then you need to define what are the principles involved. Like I said in the example before, is it autonomy versus beneficence? Is it beneficence versus confidentiality? Sometimes you think about, you have to release some information. Is it right or wrong? And then you have to go through the process. Once you defined who is involved and what are the principles as well, then you start to generate options. I'm saying options, not just black and white, options, as many options as possible. Call them options, call them alternatives, call them choices, but for each option you have to weigh consequences. Once you have a set of options and you weigh them, and then you decide to select an option. Once you select this option, it's no longer called an option, it is now called a decision, and then you implement the decision. And if you're going, you went through this process, you know exactly why you selected this choice, why you made this decision. And this is very important because you have to be very careful and to be ready to justify what we call accountability. When somebody is going to ask you, انت عملت كده ليه? Then you have to be able and ready with justifications. It's very important. بتحميك، بتحمي المريض، فبتأمن نفسك 100%. This is what we call ethical decision making process. I guess I'm done, and now thank you very much. واشوفكم ان شاء الله الحلقة الجاية. Thank you very much.